Hello. The title of my story today is Call Me Madam. Now, there's a famous musical called Call Me Madam by Irving Berlin, and some years ago I had great fun playing the role of Madam in Call Me Madam. It's about a woman who was the first American ambassador that was female, loosely based on a true story. And in the musical, the woman is very rich, full of vitality, lots of joie de vivre, and absolutely no clue what she's doing. But fortunately, because her heart's in the right place, not only does she get to be the heroine of the plot, she gets a man as well. This Call Me Madam has nothing to do with the stage or musicals, except, in a sense, it is about performing. I taught for 34 years, and for the first half of those 34 years, I was referred to by my pupils either as Miss Hawkins, or Mrs. Bishop, or Mrs. Gemmell, or most often Miss. When I became head of a big school in Nottingham, my predecessor as head teacher, a man, had decreed that all the women on the staff would be referred to as Madam. So from that moment on, I was Madam. It's better to be called Madam than Miss, if only for one reason. When children are peeved or upset or grumpy, they go, Miss. You can't do that with a two-syllable word. It's very difficult to slur a two-syllable word. So for 16 or so years, I was head of a big comprehensive school, and Call Me Madam was the order of the day. If you've ever been new to a big organisation, especially if you're going to be the boss of the big organisation, there are people who you have to get to know and make sure they're on your side, because without their support, your life isn't going to work very well. And one of the first people is your secretary. For years and years, I had at that school a splendid secretary, but she would talk to me sometimes in code. She would signal her feelings or her intentions in various ways. She belonged to an association which was called the National Association of Administrators and Secretaries in Schools and Colleges. Not a name that trips easily off the tongue. The acronym for it was NASC. And she had a NASC badge that she wore. A very splendid affair that always used to remind me of the sort of Celtic brooches that hold a plaid on one's shoulder if one's in Highland costume. And all the letters of NASC were intertwined. When I first saw it, the only three letters that stood out on that badge were S.A.S. And after I had got to know her well, and various other school secretaries that I met over the years, I realised that S.A.S. was as good a title for the person wearing it as any other that I could think of. Often, in my official capacity, I would have visitors to my office, and she looked after my diary. If it was a member of staff who came to see me about something, they would usually be offered a cup of coffee in one of the almost washed-up mugs that all the rest of us used all of the time. A visitor of slightly higher rank would get one of those green cups and saucers with ridges round the cups that there must be millions of, and they must have been used in every government office or building in the kingdom. A higher ranking guest still would get the Crown Derby tea set, but that meant you couldn't have more than 6 guests in that category because there were only 6 cups and saucers in the Crown Derby tea set. And if your guest was the pinnacle of significance, you would have a plate with biscuits, and the plate would have a doily. Now, in my office, my desk was under a fluorescent light, and like most fluorescent lights, it had a bit of a mind of its own. Sometimes it would be as good as gold, and sometimes it would flicker and drive me round the bend. But I'm a physicist, so I had no problem in dealing with my flickering fluorescent light. I would climb up onto my desk, take off my high-heeled shoe, and give the fluorescent tube a fairly hefty whack. It usually worked. One day, I was standing on my desk with only one shoe on, the other one in my hand, whacking my fluorescent light into submission just as my secretary showed in a doily quality visitor, a very smart gentleman in uniform with more braids than you would have thought humanly possible. I thought it was funny and laughed. He thought it was funny and laughed, but my secretary was absolutely mortified. I feel she thought I'd let the side down entirely, and I don't think she spoke to me other than in the absolute line of duty for about a fortnight. We were working in the school at the time when computers were starting to be the mode of operation in offices, but the education department hadn't decided to issue schools with them yet, and it was still in the days when we didn't control our own budgets. But I could send in an order for a piece of equipment if it was under a certain price. And I worked out that if I sent in 3 such submissions, I could buy a Canon technical typewriter. It was the sort of typewriting bit of a computer, and there was a video and a keyboard and obviously the disc. And Canon duly sent me the 3 different bits, and they had to be assembled. And to assemble them, they sent Malcolm. Malcolm was young, Malcolm was charming, and my secretary, whose name was Dorothy, fell in love with Malcolm almost instantly, and he stayed with us for a fortnight. And thanks to him, the transition from an ordinary typewriter into something very close to a modern computer went painlessly. I think Canon showed a great deal of forethought, and whoever appointed that young man knew exactly what they were doing. Apart from the fact that when he left us after a fortnight, we did have to endure a few days of withdrawal symptoms. Another person you have to become friendly with more or less straight away is the cook. Our cook was splendid. A pin-thin, wiry, stalwart woman who was indefatigable. She could muster chips for hundreds of hungry teenagers at the drop of a hat. She used to get pretty grumpy, but put up with when the year head forgot to tell her that the whole of year something were going to be out one day, or that everybody else was going off school in the morning and there wouldn't be a lunch break, etc., etc. And every now and again she would go on the official course. I soon discovered that when she came back from a training course, one had to be very careful how complimentary one was about her new menus. I particularly remember an occasion when she came back from the course having been advised that serving moussaka was a good thing. Her moussaka was very good, and I said so effusively, and that was a mistake, because it seemed that we had moussaka pretty well every day for weeks thereafter. But the day I want to share with you was Valentine's Day. Now, it was fairly usual at Christmas, when it was the school Christmas lunch, that there would be festive decorations in the canteen, and the ladies behind the hatch would wear festive hats and tinsel and things, and it would all be festive. But we'd never done anything festive on Valentine's Day. And on this occasion, she'd been on a course. So when we go into the lunchroom, there are posters, there are love hearts, there are happy Valentine's Days, and special additions to the menu. You could tell it was Valentine's Day because the ice buns were iced in pink. Normally they were iced in white. The meringues, she was very good at meringues, had little cream love hearts on them, and it was all very pretty. I had been teaching a group of senior boys a physics lesson, and it was customary in the school that one ate with the pupils. So I went along the canteen hatch with some of the young men that I've been teaching on either side of me. I stopped and congratulated the cook on her efforts for Valentine's Day. And she said, "Yes," she said, "it is going quite well. It's a shame I couldn't think of anything for the main course that signified Valentine's Day." At which point I unfortunately said to her, "Well, what is the main course today?" And she solemnly replied, "Toad in the hole." I think the boys on either side of me were in agony. They, of course, thought it was hilarious, but they were standing next to their head teacher, and they were not sure whether laughing was appropriate until they discovered, to their relief, that I was grinning broadly. The only person who didn't get the innuendo and didn't see what was funny was the cook. I've lots more things to tell you about of the years when I was called Madam, and I shall share some more with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.